And we are back, and we are with our guest tonight, Nancy Lord, candidate for the Fifth Judicial District Judge. Nancy, it's probably impossible to completely keep political viewpoints out of being a judge, correct? Or can you?
You'll
Or is it
have
one of
to.
the toughest things you have to do?
You have to do that. This is not the place to effectuate my dreams of if I were queen. I will need to leave my political views at the door. My job is to see that every party gets a fair hearing. The defendant, the state, both parties in a civil case, plaintiff and defendant, both parties in a marital situation, and the child, if there is a child. My job is to be unbiased and to make sure that the rights are upheld, that each party has a chance to be heard, and that I don't make a decision based on my bias or my sympathy towards one side or another. There was a candidate for Supreme Court that it was said that if you looked at his decisions, you could predict how everyone went based on the parties. If it was a corporation against the government always won. And if it was a corporation against an individual, the corporation always won. You don't want to be like that as a judge. Every case is different. Every criminal defendant is different. You can't say I'm going to be tough, because there are some cases where some very nice person just made a terrible mistake and deserves a second chance, while there's others that no sentence is long enough. We can't say how we're going to rule on particular cases.
Dig that hole deep and throw them away.
Right. Yeah. All we can say is we will know the law and we will apply it fairly and equally across the board. The district court is not a place to make law. There's a few instances where I could see you could change something. If there were a local ordinance that was challenged here and it was patently unconstitutional, say under the First Amendment, federal First Amendment, or the Nevada right to associate, right to liberty of conscience, or the right to free speech, you might be able to say that that particular law is unconstitutional. But it would come up once in a blue moon. This is not the Ninth Circuit. This is not the U.S. Supreme Court. We're only there to uphold the laws that are already on the books.
Yeah, what, as far as the level of case that you hear, is it misdemeanor and felony, or just felony, or does it matter? Is it just whatever
The
is on the
misdemeanors
docket?
are in justice court.
Okay.
But in the event that someone wanted to appeal that, you could then hear the case on the record. You will review the decisions of the justice court. The criminal cases will be felony cases. There will also be civil litigation, real estate cases, probate, domestic cases, and we need to know how to do them all. And luckily, I've done most everything. After September 11th, when I came back to, I had been going back and forth to California, and after September 11th, things got very tight economically, and that's when I really had to go to work here, when I put up an office and got my ad, and really got my feet wet with the kind of local cases that we see.
Being a judge, is there, I was talking about the defense and the prosecutor. What about, is there any interaction with the jury during the course of the trial that can make or break in other words, do juries always let you know when they're confused or when they need a little bit of guidance or whatever?
A jury can ask questions. The foreman can come to the bench with a question and say, we have a question. And then when they have a question, you then bring the lawyers in and say, okay, they've got a question. How should we answer it? And a decision is made with everybody there as to how the question will be handled. The judge also, instructs the jury, both even before the case, whether or not you can take notes, that you shouldn't go out and look for the evidence yourself. One big problem today, and I don't even know how to deal with it, is that juries get on the internet. Now, it's pretty standard instruction to tell them they're not supposed to do it. But how do you know?
I mean, I guess they don't take their smartphone from them,
they can't sit and, they can't, they're usually not sequestered unless it's a very high profile case. Yeah. But they will go home and simply get on the internet. And many criminal defendants have websites and telling them about their whole case. So that's something a judge would need to watch for. The judge will have the chance to say hello to the jury when they come in and out. They may have to get involved if a juror needs to excuse themselves. A judge also has to deal with it when a jury can't reach a decision. How many times do you force them to go back? In the William Penn trial, many, many hundreds of years ago,
Right.
he was in London and he was charged with preaching an unauthorized religion. Well, the jury
Right.
refused to convict. And they were sent back several times into jail, no food and water. Finally, Edward Bushell was the foreman of that famous jury. Finally, the judge said, okay, go in, and when you pay your fine, you can leave. And it motivated William Penn to come here and set up the rights to a jury trial.
Awesome.
Yeah. A jury has no obligation to believe one side or the other.
So, what, as far as any big cases that you've had, anything earth-shattering, or just what are some of the bigger ones that you've been in on?
Well, one of my first cases was United States versus Tucker, and this was a case of a couple who had a hydroponic store, and we lost that. They got him on conspiracy with very flimsy evidence, conspiracy to grow marijuana. But it motivated me to say, I am never going to let the federal government beat me again. And they haven't. It's been 20 years, and I've been very careful about my cases, and I have not heard a guilty verdict ever since. Another case was the case of Judy Osborne, who was growing the cannabis for the Los Angeles Cannabis Resource Club. That case went to a no-jail plea, but we appealed it. We appealed the exclusion of the medical from the trial, which is what caused the plea. Unfortunately, the Raich case came down during that, and we didn't have much chance, but it was still a very, very interesting case. Another one that I love is Valley Electric versus Overfield.
Tell you what, hold that thought. That sounds like one that might take us a minute or two to get to.
Yeah.
Okay. When we come back, Valley Electric versus Overfield, and some further discussion and getting to know Nancy Lord. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this.